Hi, welcome to the Also Called podcast, where we're asking hard questions about our place in this hectic world.
Join us as we dig into the truth about who God is, possibly discovering that we are also called. So welcome back to the Also Called podcast. I'm Mia Burke.
And I'm Andrea Bufkin.
And we're just two friends with lots of questions, looking to Jesus and the Word to figure out this thing called life and what it means to live in faith. Join us this episode as we talk about community, the much thrown around word. Does it mean what you think it means? And are you doing it? And do you want to do it well? Get ready as we journey into the heart of the show. So let's get started. So today's guest, we have Tasha Kossler, and we are really excited to have this conversation because her and her husband are doing this very well. So Tosh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tasha Kossler. I live in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. I've been married for this year in July will be 20 years. I have 5 kids ranging from 7 to 12 years old. And I'm also an owner with my husband and a friend of a restaurant called Patria. So we are very busy and we love what we do.
Awesome. Well, it's so nice to meet you. Here on the Also Called podcast, Mia and I have discussed what we feel like we're called to in this season. What do you feel like you are called to?
Well, in this season, first and foremost, my children, they are, like I said, ages 7 to 12, very formative years. So definitely pouring into them. They are involved in all kinds of sports and extracurricular activities. And so being able to be a part of that as a parent is just something very special in this season. Also, being an owner of a restaurant has been a huge blessing, not just for us to own a restaurant and a business, but also just being able to impact our community. And that's been something very special, especially living in such a small mountain town. I think there's something just beautiful about being in a community. So that's been something that I feel very called to, very connected to, definitely connected to our church. But yeah, so family, church, and our restaurant for sure.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to have this conversation with us about community. So let's start the conversation with what is community?
Yeah, I think if I could sum it up in one sentence, I would say community is intentionally living life together at its simplest form.
Yeah, I love that. For me, that's kind of the first thought that I have. It's just people that I have something in common with and people that I can call on for support, because I have most of my community, honestly, until recently, has been not close to me, but they are people that I know that I can reach out to and walk through those hard things with.
I agree. And I think I would take it one step further. In Christian community, it includes people that people you don't have anything in common with, or sometimes people you don't even like, because that commonality is Jesus or being a believer. And so I love that both of you are also including, a wider range of people in our lives. So biblically, what does community look like?
I find it interesting that when you look at God in of himself, right? There is the Trinity. There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And what I find so fascinating is in his own nature, he already models community for us. And I think that is something very beautiful, because that if we are made in his image, that just indicates that we are meant to be in community with one another. And so biblically, I think throughout the entire Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, it just shows over and over again what community looks like. I think Acts 2 is a great, clear example of what it looks like for us as humans to interact together, praying together, sharing life together, sharing a meal together, what it looks like to encourage one another, what it looks like when we're struggling, when we're in our weakness, what does it look like to walk alongside one another. And so I think there's something very beautiful about what it looks like to walk out community in a biblical context.
Yeah, I love that. Our church this year is actually doing something encouraging the church corporately. We are reading through certain foundational books of the Bible. I mean, obviously, all of it is important, but, we're starting with John. And so each week we are reading a chapter And the purpose is throughout the week, meeting with at least one person, whether you're looking for someone like Paul, like a mentor, or if you're looking for Timothy, someone to mentor, or Barnabas, someone to walk through it with you that's kind of in the same season. So the purpose is to be able to learn that discipleship and walk through the word together. We have so many different scriptures, I think, and we're going to be able to get into that a little bit with the chapter Mary of Nazareth that we have in the other disciples Bible study, the study guide. But Jesus, just looking at his ministry and his life, the 3 years that were recorded for us, we see that he traveled with a group of people, but he had his core. He had those closest people that he had with him. And then, of course, there were other people that supported the ministry. So I think he models what is he represented that, and he lived it out for us.
I love also what Katrina covers in her chapter on Mary of Nazareth in the book. She talks about how all along Mary's call into being the mother of the Messiah, from her pregnancy on, God continuously called community into her life to help her walk through. I mean, that's a big call. I mean, it's a big ask. I mean, she could have been stoned. She could have been divorced or, broken off the betrothal. But God just provided people all along that path. And even when he was hanging on the cross, Jesus handed her off to John and said, "Now this is your mother." It's just so encouraging that, like you said, there was that modeling of that for us. And can we expect that he's going to do the same thing for us? If we're called into something, that there's going to be a community of people who show up, who get it, and who are going to keep encouraging you to keep doing the thing. So why is community important? We've touched on this a lot in this podcast, but I want to go deep with what's the big deal about community?
What's really interesting is whether you're a believer or not, I think we have this innate desire and longing to be known. Like at the core of our being, I think we want to be known, we want to be seen, we want to be loved. And what the Lord used to fulfill that is community. I think he meets us in that place. He reveals himself through people. And so I think community is just such a beautiful display of like how we were meant to live life.
I love that too. Like you said, it's almost like God had a plan, the way he designed us. Who would have thought that innate desire to be seen, heard, and understood, and having that commonality with people. But I think the reason why it's so important for us is because I think the enemy wants us isolated. I mean, when he approached Eve and he had a little bit of truth with what he said to her, and she questioned her identity and the character of God. And then the same thing we see Jesus when he's in the wilderness alone and Satan tempts him. So I just believe that we set ourselves up almost for failure when we remove ourselves and isolate ourselves.
But what's interesting is, I mean, I know for me, that is my go-to when something goes wrong. Hold on, I need to push everybody away. I need to be by myself. I need to boo-hoo. I need to pitch my fit. I need to be mad at God sometimes, and then I'll come back. And as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that if I didn't isolate myself or didn't let the enemy push me into that corner, my recovery would be so much faster because there's wisdom, there's perspective, there's encouragement, there's prayer, all the things that community does for us if we let it.
I agree. I think that community kind of draws us back to the Lord. When we isolate, I think it's easy to be in our head. There's so many different thoughts, or maybe we numb out, and we don't think about anything. We don't feel about anything. But community kind of just draws us back, redirects us back to the Lord. And it's so important for that. It reminds us of truth. It reminds us of who we are. Like you said, Andrea, our identity. Sometimes we get lost when we're isolated, and it is easy for the enemy to kind of feed into that. I think racing thoughts at night, when no one's around, I think it's very easy to get distracted. And so community helps with reminding us of truth, reminding us of who we are, reminding us of who God is. And so I think ultimately it's so important because it redirects us into truth.
I was thinking specifically a couple of years ago, I was at a retreat for a ministry that I used to be involved in. And I had made these cards with people's Enneagram numbers on it because I was teaching a little section on that. And I put a blessing with it that someone else had written. And I took a moment to have everybody pass everybody's card around in the circle and write a word or two of how they saw that person. And it was like mind blowing when I got my card back what people saw in me because I didn't see those things in myself at all. And it was extremely impactful to some of the other women in that group to know that they were more loved than they thought they were. They were seen better and more capable than they thought they were. And so I just was thinking about that is what community at its best can do for us. And then it points us back to our purpose. It points us back to God. It points us back to, like you just said, Tasha, the truth. The enemy is so good at lying to us. And did God really say, or are you really that, or you just think you're that? So it can be a beautiful thing, but it can also be a challenging thing when it's not the right community.
There are so many scriptures for us, both in the study guide and just some other examples. The reason why it's important for us to be in community, like Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron. We need, like you said, that other perspective. Sometimes we need to see the circumstance or ourselves other than just through our own lens. Proverbs 11:14 talks about needing guidance. Of course, Ecclesiastes 4, I think it's 9 through 12 is in what's in the study guide. It lists all the benefits of having someone walking through that with you, and a strand of three cords is harder to break. So the three cords obviously being God, because we have to make sure that God is in that equation, which is why we're so passionate about talking about discipleship on our podcast and in the book, because there is a purpose to what we are doing. We want to look more like Christ, and we can't do that without both a relationship with God and relationship with community.
So thinking, let's first go negative and then we'll go positive. What happens when we're separated from community for whatever reason, whether we've been hurt or whether we're ashamed or, have guilt over something we've done? What happens to us when we're alone?
I think that it's what Andrea was saying. When you're isolated, it's so easy for the enemy to just speak those lies or question even what the truth is. So I think that when you're separated from community, you go down a path where you're relying on your own knowledge or you're relying on whatever someone else is saying that may or may not be true. And that can be very messy. I think if you're not grounded in the word, you're not grounded in truth, it's easy to be discouraged. It's easy to be apathetic. It could be easy to just be stuck in a rut. And so, yeah, it's really hard when you're separated from people. And I know it's easy when you're in a season where you're separated just to settle for being alone. I've been in a season where I'm like, you know what, it's okay. I'm okay being alone, but I really wasn't. And so just to have people come alongside you is really important.
So how does God work through community in your lives?
Oh gosh, so much. So our first child was actually stillborn. And that I think is one of the most pivotal times that we've seen community come alongside us, not just in practical needs, like people were very caring and bringing us meals, checking in on us. But I think just reminding that God is still good, even in the midst of heartache, even in the midst of pain. And I think when you go through seasons like that, it's so easy to question. And I think questions are okay. I think the Lord desires us to ask questions, to wrestle with Him. And so, in that place of wrestling and asking, I think it was so beautiful to have a community of people that kept reminding me, one, God is good. Two, you did nothing wrong. Like this is still, this is part of life, but like you're not being punished. Like any sort of heartache that you're experiencing is not because you're being punished. And so I think having that surrounding was really huge. It was huge for my husband. It was huge for me. And I think it actually helped our marriage because of that. And so that was one of the biggest ways that we've seen the Lord show up. We've seen the Lord show up on birthdays when people are celebrating us and just reminding us of who we are in the Lord and things that maybe we forgot along the way or didn't believe about yourself. It's just beautiful to be reminded, to know that someone actually knows who you are, and then being able to call that out in someone else is very beautiful. Our restaurant, we would not be able to open a restaurant without the people, our community. We went in just believing it was the Lord, and it sounded crazy, but people came around us and believed with us. And as soon as we got our building, people were coming in, painting walls, building things, building chairs, building tables. And so I think just having community believe in what the Lord is saying to do was huge for us as well. And so there's been just so many times that we've seen community just come rally around us. And that's why I'm a big believer about community.
I love that. I'm right there with you. I'm not exaggerating when I say a community group at a church that we had not been attending very long literally changed the course of my entire family. My husband was struggling with addiction, and they actually helped pay for him to go to an inpatient faith-based rehab. And we had known these people maybe 3 months. That's just one example of many, but it's also so beautiful to be able to share what God has blessed us with, big or small, being able to open our home to people just for fellowship, having a good time. Like, people think that if you're a Christian and all these rules that you have to follow, that, it sucks all the fun out of life. But there's so much freedom found when you have those healthy, safe relationships with people who can support you in ministry and in your calling when you doubt yourself. And if you're doubting what you thought God was calling you to, if it seems too big or that's not me. And when you have that community that can lift you up and say, no, I see what God sees and what he's calling you to, and there to support you. It's not just to have people to pick you up, literally walk you through those hard times, but it's having people to celebrate the rest of it, and being able to see the silver lining in all the circumstances, because God is faithful and God is good, and he's good at being God, and he's good to us.
That's awesome. That's so good. And it's so true. Ayla, my daughter, was just here this past week, and we were having this conversation about when we moved to Hawaii. We were supposed to move to Savannah, Georgia. We were signing the paperwork to buy a house, and God's like, nope, you're going to Hawaii instead. And we're like, Hawaii? Okay. We're talking Southerners who have never really been out of the South, kind of, sort of. But anyway, we get over there, and it was this sweet spot. I worked at a university over there, a small university, and just the people who attended, the staff and the administration. And Ayla was going to college where I worked, and it was just such a sweet time of love and community and unconditional support and people calling things out of you you didn't even know were there. And we were both lamenting that, like, we've never had that since. And there's like recognizing just what a sweet gift from the Lord of when you have that for a couple of years and then everybody's called in different directions again. And it can be such a gorgeous, wonderful thing. And your life has changed, just like what you said, because of those people. And even though you keep in touch, it's not the same, but it's awesome. So, Tasha, can you talk to us a little bit about how you guys built community and like what your heart is behind your restaurant?
Yeah, so our restaurant is called Patria. And actually, that word patria is found in scripture. It's from Ephesians 3. It's where it says, from whom the whole family in heaven and earth derives its name. And that word family is translated in Greek to patria. And so that really is the basis of what we built our restaurant on. We wanted people who came through the doors to feel like family, felt like they were coming home. And that's really how we've been building community. Everyone has a story. Everyone walks in with their own story, and a lot of people just want to be known, want to be heard. And so that's really what we do at the restaurant. Obviously, we we serve food and coffee and all those things, but really taking the time to actually meet people, actually hear their story, actually make them feel known is part of how we've been building community. We've done fundraisers for people. We've helped cater events around town. And I think we just love being part of the community. Just this last week, we did a fundraiser for one of our employees who's going to have back surgery. And so just opening up our restaurant at night and allowing people to come in and be part of that journey as well. Inviting people in has been such a special thing that I think even they felt included into a community that they were already a part of, but they felt included being on a journey. We also hosted a Chamber of Commerce business happy hour. And so just being able to rally around other business owners and being able to just encourage one another has been something that's been special as well. And so we're building community in so many different ways at our restaurant. That really was the Lord's idea, and we didn't know what it was going to look like. And so we just feel so grateful that as we continue on, we look and we're like, oh, we're doing exactly what the Lord wanted to do. And so we're just just very grateful that the Lord invited us and called us to this. And we're excited for just what it looks like to continue to be part of this community, to encourage our community, continue to build community within our restaurant, but also outside the walls of our restaurant.
Was there a need in the community, or what led you guys to move in that direction?
I think that we live in a generation where there's a lot of fatherlessness. And so I think we've seen just marriages falling apart within our town. I think we've seen the family unit kind of separated a little bit. And the Lord can choose to minister to people however he wants to. I'm not saying that our restaurant is the means in which he's doing that, but I think we've always just had a heart for family. We've had a heart for youth. We've had a heart for marriages. And as we stepped forward in this business venture, we're just so happy that we're able to connect what the Lord's given us a heart for, to be able to walk that out in a very practical way at our restaurant.
That's amazing. That's so great. I love that you just have this entrepreneurial spirit and you're like, hey, we're just going to be whatever he needs us to be. That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about us, or just someone in general. What can we do to build community?
What's really funny is I don't think we need to be in a special role or a special season to build community. We can build community right where we're at. You can be a new mom with babies and still build community, right? I think it's just choosing to be intentional, to be around people, to be vulnerable enough to be known and taking the time to know other people. I think really at its core, that's really what it is. I think it's if you're at church leading a life group or a Bible study or getting coffee, being intentional about getting coffee with a friend builds community. I think it breaks down barriers. It breaks down walls. And I really think that that's where community starts.
I love that. That is a beautiful explanation of what community is, and how we can start building our own is making ourselves available, giving the invitation, and serving others instead of being self-focused, pointing people to Christ and sharing with them. I know you said you serve food, but it sounds like you're serving up a little bit of gospel too. So I think that's beautiful, and something that each of us can do every day is just making ourselves available, inviting others in, and sharing the truth with them. Tasha, you really did sum it up in such a beautiful way. So, well, guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Also Called podcast. We look forward to chatting with you next time. But remember to stay curious
and keep seeking.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Also Called provides a space for honest conversations about the truth of who God is, who we are, and the relationships He wants us to have with Him, each other, the church, and ourselves. This episode was just the start of the conversation. Be sure to check the show notes for extra resources to go further. You can also find our social media sites to join the discussion. Don't miss our next chat by subscribing to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also Called is part of Bible and Pop Culture, a crowd-funded nonprofit that allows us to provide our content to start great conversations for free. You can help us keep doing this by checking out BibleandPopCulture.com or AlsoCalled.org's Donate Subscribe buttons with a one-time gift, supporting us monthly, or sharing us with someone who might like the conversation. Thank you for being a part, and see you next conversation.